So, the old saying, you're the sum of the five people that you spend the most time with. I want you to extrapolate that and just allow that to be a reflection of all of your reality. So, if you go to work, whether you own a business or you have a job or you work from home, the world that you surround yourself in while you're doing that activity for however many hours a day you're doing it is the limited version of reality that you're giving a large proportion of your conscious awake time to every single day. So I want you to ask the question to yourself, who's governing that vision? Who's governing that direction? And is that something that you feel in alignment with? We live in extraordinarily rapidly accelerating times. And, you know, it's becoming very, very obvious, if it hasn't been for some time, that it really is a kind of a solo journey in this life until you're in harmony with who you are, in which case others can come into your ride. But if you don't know you first, you lose yourself in other people's worlds. And depending on how clarified other people's worlds are and how much traction they have in the external world will depend on how much you can potentially lose yourself in them if you don't really know who you are. So with this massive acceleration, we're all being asked, like, what is the actual, like, what do you actually want to do? Because you can accelerate business growth much faster now than ever, and that's exponentially increasing. You can accelerate a personal brand now faster than you ever could before if you know what you want to be. You can accelerate, your exposure. You can accelerate so many things right now, really quite quickly. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And do you know what's worth accelerating? Do you know who you are now at this point in your experience to know what's worth fucking sticking a grenade underneath? Because that's what's kind of possible. That's what it's starting to become in certain people's lives. So we're always going to find ourselves in life in situations where change is happening. It's going to be happening every day in your narrow view of your reality. And it's happening at a macro level in the world at just phenomenal paces. And obviously, whatever most people are looking at online is probably a very distorted version of the actual truth that's going on. Everybody is a commentator these days. And so if you get your information from anywhere other than your own eyes and ears and observation of something, it's coming through the lens of somebody else's vision of reality, orientation, from where they come from, how many limiting beliefs and fear-based beliefs that they live through. It's coming through a whole bunch of filters that your set of filters have decided to trust. Whereas if you start narrowing down your focus to actually just what's in front of you, and you allow yourself to give yourself the experience of enjoying what's in front of you, you will start to have more experiences that you enjoy, and your world will start. It's like, I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably had a school reunion or two. It's so fascinating to observe the physical and mental effects of the journeys and the paths that people have been down. Like, who is this person now after 10, 20, 30, 50 years, however old you are? It's so fascinating. And can we still find for example, I'm not really friends with anyone that I was at school with anymore, but there was no like fallouts or anything. It was just drifting apart, having very different lives. And so I have no doubt whatsoever that like getting together with some old schoolmates, it'd be like, oh, hello, mate. It'd be easy. It would just be easy because there's a place that that you've been before that was true, that you just know you'll be able to find again, and I always, anyone who's around me, if anyone kind of gets locked in seriousness, I usually go quiet for a second because I'm like, oh, funk. Like, it's like vroom, seriousness just goes vroom. It sucks energy instantly. And so I usually just wait in the void for a second because I'm like, there's nothing to say to that, because I don't want to join them in like the funk that they're in about like whatever it is that they're perceiving. So I just let the void hang. And then always something comedic comes in, or they realize, oh shit, that was fucking heavy. And they correct themselves, like they come into a level of clarity with, oh, geez, I don't want to be that person. And they kind of step up for themselves. And I find I do that too. If I come into a new person, new energy, somebody, and I bring something funky, and I can feel that I just sink the energy in the room or in the, whatever it is. I take a breath, I'm like, oh, that was me. All right. Where am I off? Yeah. Okay. Hello, everybody. You reintroduce yourself. You want to come back in from a different place. And we're all being asked to do that with our lives, and I'm somebody I'm fortunate and unfortunate in a way to have had a very strange life where I was deeply involved, but also quite observant from a very young age and asking a lot of questions from a very young age, and then quite deep on a kind of financially driven path, which spat me out in the most rude and obnoxious way. And after that, I've had a lot of time in observation and finding it actually very difficult to kind of come into connection with people that I can serve and partners that I can work with and so on in a sustainable way, because I was still like, yeah, but because I had all these big visions and I knew I had this kind of skill, talent, gift to be able to mirror somebody and help them transmute whatever it is that they're struggling with. But I didn't know how to kind of give that or be that or like sustain myself as that. And so I had to go on all these other journeys to come back to it and actually own it fully. But it's been a real challenge with all these distractions, because there's still a part of me that's like, oh, should I be learning more about AI? And then I go, well, no, I mean, it's a tool and it's getting better. So there's going to come a time where it's actually just really natural for me. And I've had that a couple of times, for example. I don't want to outsource everything to something that should be done by a human, but there's so many things that don't need to be anymore. Should I be going all in on, I owned a marketing agency years ago, and I'm like, God, geez, do I need to kind of go back into marketing in a new way? Or do I just need to focus on being present with you and allow what's obvious for me to continue learning or implementing to just come to me and not push anything? Because again, this whole kind of leaning out slightly to be able to lean in a more accurate way, in a way that actually we want to meet reality in. When you're doing that with your whole being, you learn how to lean into what feels edgy and exciting at the same time. As an old coach of mine said, I think he had a company actually called Scary and Exciting. I didn't do a lot of work. I think it was called Pete. I didn't do a lot of work with him, but I love that as a concept, because it's just two ends of the same spectrum. The feeling of fear and the feeling of excitement literally are just both ends of the same spectrum. And I don't think as humans we're supposed to operate too much in those things, but when we have moments of intimidation or of the fear of growing or the fear of getting bigger, when those moments come up, we only really have two options. We kind of shy away from it and ignore it and push it away, or we lean in because we actually know that this is true for me. It's like, this is the thing. It's not that I'm being guided by the universe not to do it. It's that I've developed patterns and habits that haven't included this, and now I'm overcoming those and leaning into the consistency of the decision. So lean out a little bit. Give yourself a little bit of space. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of space. Momentum's important, but again, what direction? And we've all had situations in our lives where somebody has come in and shone a light on something, or they've introduced us to somebody, and then all of a sudden, like an entirely new world opens up. But that has to happen within you first. You can't be relying on the outside to continue to give you that. It will reflect more of that when you're back in that space. But while you're not truly actually just good, the outside's always going to give things that aren't really right for you. And your old habits and patterns and identity is quite likely to say yes to things that actually you don't want to say yes to anymore. So give yourself space to get to know yourself to a level where you really know what's a yes and what's a no for you. Because as you start going through life, for all of us, it just gets more and more important. And now more than ever, it's well important. So if I can help, there's some ways to enroll my help below, either as a guide one-on-one, or there's some ways to do it more in a digital format. Both are very effective. I use digital format for myself. I obviously can't actually coach myself, but I would if I could.